91 meters underwater, a 16-year-old diving prodigy suddenly breaks free from his companions in a frenzy and plunges deeper into the cave at terrifying speed. His partner tries to rescue him, but within seconds, the boy is completely swallowed by the darkness. What's even more chilling is that when the rescue team later dives back into those black waters, the same horrifying scene repeats itself. A rescue diver suddenly loses his mind in front of everyone and starts attacking his teammates before plummeting uncontrollably into the abyss. Why would trained divers who were perfectly fine before entering the water suddenly lose their minds in the same cave? What on earth did these two see down there? This is the tragic story of the Emerald Spring Cave diving disaster. Emerald Spring is located in a private residence in Orlando, Florida. From above, it looks like nothing more than a small 45-meter wide pond with calm, mirror-like dark green water. You'd probably walk right past it without a second glance. But beneath the surface, the sight is enough to take anyone's breath away. It's an hourglass-shaped underwater cave system, estimated to be at least 152 meters deep. Its true depth remains a mystery to this day. In the 1960s, the owner rented the site to a diving club as a training ground. The club's owner was Hal Watts, co-founder of the International Professional Diving Association. On August 13, 1970, 35-year-old Hal took several students to Emerald Spring. They weren't there for training, but to search for a safety vest, lost 2 days earlier deep in the cave. That vest would be worth nearly $1,500 today. Losing it was heartbreaking. Diving with him was 16-year-old Fred. Despite his young age, Fred was a well-known diving prodigy in Orlando, and one of only 4 divers to have gone deeper than 100 meters. Due to the technology at the time, they weren't using professional mixed gases for deep dives, but ordinary compressed air. At depths of dozens or even over 100 meters, breathing regular air carries extremely high risks, but at the time, no one thought it was a problem. Everyone had always dived this way. Around 11 a.m., Hal and Fred followed the guideline down to 46 meters. They searched the area, but found no sign of the missing vest. Hal checked his pressure gauge and signaled Fred to ascend, but after swimming up just a few meters, Hal suddenly noticed the light beam behind him had vanished. He turned around and saw Fred had reversed direction and was plunging vertically deeper into the cave at incredible speed. Ahead of him was his dropped flashlight. The boy's instinct was simple. If something drops, you go after it. Hal's mind exploded with panic. Their gas supply was already limited. Every extra meter downward would dramatically increase decompression time and gas consumption on the way back. Chasing after him under these conditions was almost suicidal. Without hesitation, Hal turned and swam after him. What chilled him to the bone was how much faster Fred was descending. Enduring severe ear pain, Hal pushed down to 91 meters. He wanted to keep going, but his gas was running out, and the guideline had ended. Fred's silhouette, still chasing the flashlight, vanished completely into the darkness. Hal had no choice but to ascend alone. After such extreme depth changes, combined with intense fear and anxiety, Hal ascended faster than planned. On the way up, he suddenly felt dizzy. Then his consciousness was cut off, like someone flipped a switch. Luckily, he regained consciousness a few seconds later. His body was racked with pain, as if steel needles were piercing his joints. He knew he had severe decompression sickness, but he had no choice. He forced his barely responsive body to the surface and used the last of his clarity to call for rescue. Soon after, the rescue team arrived. The search began on the evening of August 13th and continued until late on the 10th. Multiple divers took turns searching. They meticulously checked every part of the cave, but never found any trace of Fred. On August 16th, Hal, still pale and barely recovered from decompression sickness, insisted on joining the search. Personally, perhaps in his heart, the disappearance of the 16-year-old boy had become a burden he would never be able to set down. That day, 6 divers split into 2 teams. Hal was grouped with rescue divers Bud and Bill. They followed the guideline back down to the 91-meter mark where Fred had vanished. After searching silently in the darkness for what felt like forever, Hal and Bud decided to head back up, while Bill continued searching deeper. The three split into two groups. It was this decision that set the wheels of tragedy in motion once again. Not long after, Hal and Bud had ascended to 46 meters. According to protocol, during ascent from deep dives, decompression stops are mandatory. Divers must pause at specific depths to allow excess nitrogen to slowly leave the body. Otherwise, the result could be severe joint pain at best, or unconsciousness and death at worst. The decompression process is extremely long and tedious. You can only hover in the freezing darkness, counting your own breaths to pass the time. A somewhat restless Bud had his attention caught by bubbles and stirred up silt rising nearby. A moment later, Bud suddenly felt his body go immobile. He looked down and discovered he was tangled in a rope that had appeared from nowhere. Bud's pupils shrank in terror. Panic flooded through him. He struggled desperately to break free, but the more he fought, the tighter the rope became. It wrapped around him like a cold snake. Hal, who was resting nearby, noticed something was wrong. He quickly drew his diving knife and cut the rope off Bud, but Bud's panic burst out like a dam breaking. Completely out of control, he began swimming frantically upward, as if fleeing from something invisible. But under the effects of nitrogen narcosis, his movements were clumsy and painfully slow, like someone trapped in a nightmare, who can't run no matter how hard they try. Hal swam back to Bud's side and tried to steady him. But at that moment, Hal witnessed a sight that made his blood run cold. Bud's regulator had somehow come out of his mouth and was floating beside his shoulder, releasing a stream of tiny bubbles. Instead of putting the regulator back in, Bud grabbed the inflation hose of his buoyancy vest and started breathing heavily from the tube that should have had no air. Bud's bizarre behavior made Hal realize instantly that he was likely suffering from nitrogen narcosis. Breathing too much nitrogen under high pressure can cause intoxication similar to being drunk. Some people become overly excited, others fall into uncontrollable anxiety and fear, while some experience hallucinations and lose all basic judgment, leading them to do things they would never do in a normal state. It's a condition where self-rescue underwater is nearly impossible. The only solution is to ascend immediately and use a decompression chamber to purge the excess nitrogen. With that in mind, Hal prepared to drag Bud to the surface by force, but the moment he got close, Bud reacted as if triggered and began punching and kicking Hal wildly. Hal's regulator was ripped from his mouth, and he became hopelessly tangled in the guideline. He wanted to save Bud, but he knew that staying would doom them both. With no other choice, Hal pushed Bud away, cut the guideline with his knife, and ignoring the agony of decompression sickness, swam upward with every ounce of strength he had. Using sheer willpower, he finally broke the surface. Meanwhile, Bud, still breathing from the empty vest hose and having lost all buoyancy, was slowly sinking deeper into the cave. At the same time, Bill, who had stayed deeper to continue searching, saw Bud behaving erratically while ascending. Bill tried to swim over to stop him, but Bud turned and attacked him violently. Bill's regulator was torn away, and his mask was ripped completely off. After swallowing several mouthfuls of water, Bill shoved Bud away and frantically tried to put his gear back on in the darkness. By the time he recovered, he realized that Bud had already sunk deeper into the cave and vanished. When Bill finally completed his long decompression and surfaced, the multi-day rescue operation was immediately called off. No one went back down. They all knew it was pointless. Fred and Bud would remain forever in the eternal darkness of Emerald Spring. Afterwards, investigators learned from Fred's family that he had a history of heart problems. It was believed that the moment his flashlight dropped, Fred was likely startled, triggering his underlying heart condition. Combined with the extreme pressure of deep water, he lost control and fell. As for Bud, experts believe he was suffering from classic nitrogen narcosis at 46 meters. It began with overwhelming anxiety and panic, followed by a sharp decline in judgment, then hallucinations and aggressive behavior, until he finally drifted into the abyss. What's even more unsettling is that a person's susceptibility to nitrogen narcosis depends not only on depth, but also heavily on individual physiology. This makes it almost impossible to predict in advance. Although Hal suffered severe decompression sickness, he received timely treatment and survived. This man, who in just 4 days witnessed 2 companions die in almost the same way, did not give up the sport he loved. In the decades that followed, Hal completed tens of thousands of dives, setting one deep diving record after another. He eventually became a living legend in the diving world. But not everyone has his willpower or luck. After the tragedy, the owner of Emerald Spring announced that the cave would be permanently sealed. Some doors should remain closed forever, because once opened, they may cost others their lives. That's all for this video. See you in the next one.